Hey guys, and welcome back to ScarletSprites. Today we're going to talk a little bit about something I don't normally talk about on the channel, and that is Arcade1Up and today's announcement of NFL Blitz. And before we even get started, I want to say that I never thought they'd get the NBA Jam license, and they proved me wrong on that one. I definitely didn't think they were going to pull off the NFL license, and here we are today discussing Blitz. So kudos to them for getting both of these things licensed and out there for people. It's really pretty unbelievable, and I'll be the first to admit I didn't think it was going to happen. Midway is a company that means a lot to me. A lot of their games stole tons of quarters from me back in the day, whether it was Terminator or NBA Jam, Open Ice, a personal favorite of mine, Hang Time, Rampage. I mean, you can go right down the line. There's so many different games that these guys produced. Anytime there's a new offering of any type, any format, it just kind of raises an eyebrow for me, and I want to take a look at it. And, you know, unfortunately today, the first thing that stood out when I'm reading a press release is the game's being sanitized. And that was the first thing that stood out. I think a lot of people jumped on it, myself included. And, you know, I just want to hit the brakes for a second because I want to give Arcade1Up credit where credit is due. Just like I never thought they'd get the NFL license, I thought there was no chance in hell they would ever attempt the 49-way sticks on this cabinet, and they did. So they really should deserve some credit for that. Now, we don't know how good those sticks are going to be. We don't know how well they're going to handle when playing this game. There's a lot of unknowns, but for now, I'm giving them credit for at least attempting this. They could have stuck 8 ways on this and just been done with it, but they didn't. They're making an effort. And for those of you who don't know, the original cabinets for NFL Blitz, Showtime, Gauntlet Legends, and Gauntlet Dark Legacy, there might be another one I'm forgetting, but those 3 come to mind. They all use these 49-way joysticks, which are different than the standard 8-way sticks that most arcade cabinets used. Now, Arcade1Up could have taken the easy way out because there is a dip switch setting on the original boards that allow them to be used with standard 8-way joysticks. So Arcade1Up could have very easily just said like, well, hey, this is another way of playing the game, and it was original, and this is legit. But they didn't, and you know, I got to give them credit for that. So at this point in time, I don't have any idea how this is going to play out. I mean, maybe Dan Marino does, right? Because he was on the press release. There's a picture of him playing the cabinet, or maybe playing the cabinet if it was in fact running. But nobody really knows how these 49-way sticks operate, or I should say probably very few people do, at least not here in the public or, you know, anybody that's doing reviews or anything like that yet. So credit to Arcade1Up for at least attempting this. I'm impressed. Again, I was a naysayer. I would have bet money that this was never going to happen, and they did it. So kudos to them for that. But then we do get into this press release a little bit more. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit here because this is a write-up from another article, but they're saying to support the NFL's current player health and safety initiatives, a specific set of tackles and after the whistle hits were removed or edited in the remastered versions of NFL Blitz, NFL Blitz 99, and NFL Blitz 2000 Gold Edition. Ooh, now that's kind of a big deal. And I know there's a lot of people saying that it isn't. And there is some validity to that argument. Looking at things from a face value of gameplay, does it alter that, I guess, in any large, meaningful way, speaking strictly on gameplay? Probably not. And again, none of us have actually played this game, so we don't know yet. We just don't know. But my guess is that altering a few animations and removing the after whistle hits isn't going to change the overall style of play for this game all that much. So that argument, if you want to take that stance on this, there is validity to it, 100%. However, I think why I would argue this is a huge deal for the game, aside from censorship, which again, man, I felt like I was living back in the 90s and not in a good way today. You know, this whole thing of censoring games was a pretty big deal for any of you that lived through the whole Mortal Kombat release thing, which actually became kind of something people were using as an analogy for the Blitz censorship. And I think from one standpoint, I think it is. It's a good analogy because we're talking specifically about player animations being changed, removed from a game. And, there's almost a one-for-one comparison there. And, they're both Midway games too, which is interesting. I think about it a little bit differently. And this is why I think it's a big deal. NFL Blitz is an experience. It's a mood. There is a tone to the game. And that very much factors into the feel and the vibe. And I know we're talking about kind of subjective things here, but Midway just had a way of capturing this. I mean, if you've ever played Terminator 2, with the guns, with Arnold and Eddie Furlong and the digitized graphics and the soundtrack, the game itself is really pretty, it's basic, but they had a way of capturing something that just, it's like that je ne sais quoi. They pull it together and create an experience. This added cartoon violence and extremeness did just that for NFL Blitz. I kind of thought about the Mortal Kombat example for a while, and I think in some ways the way that played out, the Genesis version was basically full fatalities, and the Super Nintendo version, the blood became sweat, and the fatalities I think were toned down a little bit, or they were altered. And I don't know, there was something that was missing from that Super Nintendo version. But I don't know, for me, almost a better analogy when you're thinking about mood and tone of a game, I think about Crazy Taxi and that Offspring soundtrack. If you removed the Offspring soundtrack from Crazy Taxi and inserted something else, I don't know that it feels like the same game anymore. Sure, it'll play exactly the same way, but there's just something about it that is stolen when that heart, that soul of the game is removed. It just doesn't have that same feel. And I think that's a real disservice to NFL Blitz to be altering this kind of stuff. And I almost feel bad for Arcade1Up in this scenario, because they went out and got the NFL license, something that was probably not easy to do. They put out a cabinet that a lot of people wanted, that a lot of people didn't think was ever going to happen, myself included. They did the damn 49-way sticks that I never thought they would do, and there was a lot of naysayers that were saying that was never going to happen. I'm including myself. They did it. And I don't think it was them who made the decision to tone this game down. This is almost certainly coming from the NFL, because the NFL is under the gun for concussions, right? There's lawsuits. There's players who are still playing the game who are kind of, embroiled in some legal issues with the NFL. And there are past players who say the NFL downplayed concussions, right? And so there's this whole thing going on, and the NFL is trying to clean up that it doesn't want anything to do with extreme violence and head hits and, all this kind of stuff. It's silly in my mind if you can't separate reality from cartoon violence in an arcade game. It's just absolutely mental. You shouldn't be playing games, honestly, at that point. Like, if you can't differentiate, between the two worlds. And this just goes back to the whole arguments that we used to have back in the 90s again. But yeah, ultimately, I feel bad for Arcade1Up in this scenario, because they definitely did what they could in order to bring this game to life and get it out to people who really wanted this, and then just got bit by the NFL having to sanitize this game. And I just think that removing this, it steals a piece of the soul out of a game and that mood. And I'm sure you guys can think of other games that have these intangibles that are tied to them that help make the game and make it an experience. And I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that maybe this isn't as big of a deal as I'm thinking it's going to be. But, even thinking about tackles after somebody scores a touchdown, and then, the great Tim Kitzrow comes in with holy f***ing shit, right? You hate to see that. Can we take a look at that again? I love that. And without that, it's just the tone of the game changes, which is, I think, what the NFL wants. And it's just unfortunate. it's also unfortunate from a game preservation standpoint in that, look, I know we've got MAME, and I'll continue to play this game on MAME and on my original cabinet, and I suspect a lot of you will probably be doing one or two or both of those as well. But it's a shame that a commercial product comes out with censorship, and it's offering something new. I mean, I guess they are calling it the remastered version, but it certainly doesn't sound that way so far. It sounds like a censored version, and we've lost part of the past with this, unfortunately, for new consumers. That's not a good thing, in my opinion. So until we see this all play out and we get our hands on it, I guess we really don't know. And I really hate speculation videos, but this one just kind of really caught my attention, and curious to hear your guys' thoughts. That's my take on this, is that you've basically have stolen the soul and the vibe out of NFL Blitz, which is not going to go over well. But that is an opinion, and until we actually see it, we just don't know. So thanks so much for tuning in and listening to me rant a little bit today about the NFL Blitz situation and Arcade1Up. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you all next time. Later, guys.